passed by multiple cars, as I mentioned earlier on, so Nurov in a very precarious situation, but he often finds himself in these places. Doesn't qualify as well as he races.
Up front, they are getting with Lee Aberdeen and Luca Varani, not very far apart at all here. But I just want to see how Alistair Haight deals with Marcello Kessler coming around the old hairpin.
I would say it's not the best decision they've ever made, just not having done that under the safety car, really.
Yeah, they're taking their pit stop strategies from Ferrari lately or something. What's going on?
In turn one, just too much gas on them, too much feet on the loud pedal, and unfortunately he's dropped him all the way down the order. But Philip Hammer is out in front by an 8.91 seconds. Dan Michael is a wall there, sir. And it definitely doesn't want to be hitting that earlier on as well.
Difficult, the understeer is in the dirty air through that final corner because it's such a long corner and you get dragged off into the grass very easily. He'll have the slipstream down towards the chicane. Peterson was briefly alongside, but that slipstream has saved him and kept him in third.
Yeah, Varani now lost a little bit of time to Aberdeen, about half a second. Peterson is Pike's pushed Morton forward up ahead. He's got out of line. It's now Pike going to have a go at Werrell. Don't push him off. He's in the championship fight. Jack Werrell chasing down Carl Jacklin. Further down, Rob Williams and Chris Barnes.
Sensational run outside line now though for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's come back into play. Exactly. Miller's still such trouble. He's left on second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
On to the back end of Phil Jocelyn. So there's been a lot of movers and shakers in this first 2 laps here for race.
Absolutely serious racing league. Everybody's allowed to have fun. Yeah, and it's all about the entertainment. So I hope everybody is enjoying themselves out there in the chat. We know that Ron is been enjoying himself watching. The Burger King machine's off into the grass a little bit there as they're really bunching up now.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome along to another round of the Almost Pro Championship Season 6 definitely starting to get some traction in the second half of what has turned itself into a fantastic championship so far. Of course, tonight we take to Marina Bay, a night race, of course, around the streets of Singapore. My name is Zach Sweeney. You're watching along live, both on the JP Broadcasting YouTube channel and, of course, over on the APC League Twitch as well. Make sure to like, subscribe, /follow. All of that snazzy jazz that we come to know and love on both respective channels. Show your support, get yourself involved, and maybe find yourself on the grid of this fantastic championship, as I say, in the future. Because they are looking for drivers. We have got a couple of new debutants today in the form of Oren McGilligan. You'll see him on screen as McPug. And, of course, we also have Owen Boldero as well, Stad Body, as he'll be known in the, on the game, I suppose. As of yet, I can only see one of the two new debutant Williams, so be very, very interesting to see how they get on. Of course, the last person to debut this season was, of course, Andrea Chenkovan back in Silverstone. As we all know, he went and won that race, as well as a P2 last time out at Zandvoort. So the Croatian, a very, very strong driver in his own right, and, well, maybe proving that debutants don't necessarily have to feed their way into the championship. They can immediately hit the ground running with some great success. Will we see that from either of our debutants over their debut races? Well, we'll find out, of course, in moments to come. We've got 18 minutes of qualifying, the usual the usual routine. 18 minutes in qualifying, followed by 50% race distance. In this case, that's going to be 31 laps, which, to be fair, a fairly long time around Singapore. One of the longer circuits on the F1 calendar. I believe a similar length to Spa, or very, very just under the length of Spa. Very similar in their lap times as well, are the two circuits. So, be interesting to see how strategy plays into a factor. Are we going to see any weather effect as well? Because, of course, we had Spa and Zandvoort off the bounce of each other with wet-affected races and, of course, wet-affected qualifyings as well. So, very, very cool dynamic. Maybe we could see a little bit of that into the race today. Who knows? I mean, Marina Bay is difficult as is. We are loading ourselves into qualifying. So what I'll do is I'll shoot us over into, of course, the beautiful game feed here. As you can see, there we are. Fantastic. What I'll do as well, by the way, close championship. Boom, there they are. Lewis Smith leading the way, of course, on 129 points. Of course, following a decent comeback after Zandvoort. Started towards the back end of the field, I think on the final row of the grid. Fought his way up to a decent position. He's now only 8 points ahead of Ethan Shackleton, of course, the double champion of this season. Or in fact, actually, no, sorry, the season 4 champion of this series, of this championship. He, of course, has boasted success before and is now doing his best to maybe respark another championship campaign, as I say, off the back of a Ferrari 1-2 in Zandvoort. Carl Stuart-Woodard is there, albeit a decent way off. Still definitely in the shout for some race victories or even maybe a little bit more in that, potentially with some intrigue, some carnage in the race. Very easy for those, of course, that 30-point deficit that he's got to then very quickly find its way back down to earth, and maybe he can be in the shout for the championship. Drew Bliss is there as well, ahead of Oliver Milner. Andrea Chenkovan, again, a P2 last time out. Considering he's only been here for 3 races, 55 points, not too bad. Thijs Mosbergen ahead of Adam Watson and Connor Stuart-Woodard as well, round off the top 10 when it comes to our drivers. And there you can see as well the team's championship. Ferrari 1-2 last time out in Zandvoort. That has catapulted themselves into the Constructors' Championship lead ahead of Aston Martin. Mercedes-AMG, of course, only a point behind in third ahead of Red Bull. So those top 4 are really the main lot in that fight for the Constructors' Championship. McLaren ahead of AlphaTauri, of course, a little bit of ways off in their own sort of universe as such compared to the other two. Alpine, Alfa Romeo, neither of whom have any drivers, nor too does Haas for the time being. And then, of course, we have Williams, which has now got a field of drivers in the form of, as I say, McGilligan and Boldero. Boldero is here today, and as long as he finishes, he will be racking up some points as well. So, awesome stuff to see. I'm just going to, as I can sort of just about catch the APC logo, so apologies, but I just want to make sure that it's right. It's a slight adjustment, and is it made? No, it's not. It's not. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. Give me 2 minutes. Not even that. Just got to, otherwise it will send me crazy. That will a little bit more. I'm pedantic, all right? It's fine. There we go. That'll do. I'm happy with that. That's fine. If it's wrong, I'll get some stick about it later. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. What should we do, right? Let's focus on qualifying, shall we? Rather than my logo placements on the broadcast. I have too much power in the commentary booth, is what it is. Perfect timing, by the way, for Connor Stewart-Woodard and his lap, of course, in the Krypton World McLaren. Into turn number 1, of course, this left-hander that very quickly leads you into swooping right. You're just trying to keep the car, essentially, as straight as possible. All of them, of course, understandably, on the soft compounder tyre. And now he's running his way into, technically, turn 4. Little bit tentative on the way in. You've got to be really careful and commit, basically. The moment you start second-guessing yourself is the moment that things start to go wrong. Through into probably the first overtaken opportunity on the circuit, down into third gear, you've really again just got to commit. Be careful of the curb on the right hand side, as it can allow the car to bottom out and spin you round. Again through this right hander, it's all about just easing the car through a lot of 90-degree corners here at Singapore, and that really is difficult to handle in big, long wheelbase Formula 1 cars. Into what used to be the Singapore sling, you just shoot your way through the left, get on the power, just brake as soon as you're straight for the right, and then again slowly build up the traction as you go over the bridge into the hairpin. Again, brake as soon as the car's straight. Second gear just to allow for that traction as Rastakal sets the provisional fastest lap time. Of course, Adam Watson in the fellow McLaren Krypton World going into this late braking zone. Third gear nicely, and now we get to the slightly altered part of the Singapore circuit, of course revamped a couple of years ago as to adjust for the very clanky middle sector. You go straight into another braking zone, into the final chicane, which then leads you into the final corner here at Singapore. Is it going to be enough to see Connor Stewart-Woodard ahead of Stadboy, who, by the way, has done a sensational lap for his debut in qualifying? 29.2 is just over 2.5 seconds quicker than what Connor Stewart-Woodard was able to do. So fantastic stuff from Owen Boldero. As we also have Thijs Moosbergen out there in the Red Bull. He is without his teammate of Jordi Lansing, and will be looking to recover off what was the back of a fairly lackluster home race in Zandvoort. A lot left on the table for the both of them. He goes up onto the provisional front row as well. Talking of qualifying, how important is it going to be is the question. Marina Bay, tight, twisty, technical, all the way around. Track position might well not necessarily sort of decide this race as such, but definitely give it a good indication, a good push as to who is going to be where and what to expect as the race progresses. So these next 12.5 minutes or so are going to be vital to see who starts where. As we saw in Zandvoort as well, doesn't necessarily have to be the be-all and end-all, because Zandvoort, very technical circuit, difficult to overtake it sometimes, and well, Lewis Smith was able to absolutely catapult himself through the field. Good strategy here at Singapore, can make up for poor qualifying, but you don't want to have to start the race on the back foot. You don't want to have to bank on having to make it up. You'd rather just start well. Start at the front, lead the way, and be absolutely fine with it, and hope, of course, that then that's enough, basically. Settling or being okay with starting the back is not what, as a racing driver, you want. You want to be as far forward as possible, putting in the best lap time possible. And here at Marina Bay, that is easier said than done, it must be said. It's a very technical circuit, as I say. You can see very tight, very twisty, and also very high speed in some points. You are carrying a decent chunk of speed through all of these corners. Arguably one of the most difficult circuits on the F1 calendar, particularly in recent times with the street circuits and things. But a very, very fun one indeed. Here we have Kyle Stewart-Woodard, who is fielding a little bit of an upgrade today. He's recently upgraded to the Ferrari SF1000 wheel rim, of course, for the Thrustmaster sort of ecosystem as such. I think that's what they call it, right? The ecosystem, basically compatible rims and wheels and things like that. He's upgraded to, of course, the full Ferrari replica. Of course, they did the 2011 replica of the Ferrari wheel. Then, of course, a couple of years ago, I think 3 years ago now, I was still at school while I was doing it, so yeah, about 3 years ago, they released the SF1000 one. Full heads-up display, proper buttons and everything, all programmable. And also, I think he's upgraded to the magnetic shifters that you get. And I was in Donington Park this weekend for the Historic Festival. And my good friend Mick Sutton was there with his simulators and things. And he's got some serious gear. And he also had sort of magnetic throw shifters. And trust me when I tell you that they are absolutely magic when it comes to response and feel and the click, the instant sort of just everything is so seamless. Obviously, not to say that other ones aren't, but they can be a bit clunky, a bit loud. Whereas with sort of magnetic throw shifters, you click it and boom, it's done. It's straight back to where it needs to be. You can spam it up the gears, whatever you want, and it is just so much better. It feels nicer, you feel comfortable, you can settle yourself into a nice rhythm. But it does take some adjusting to. It's not like you're instantly going to be quicker, because again, anything is different and your body needs to adapt. Similar if you're going from sort of spring-loaded pedals into load sail pedals, right? Where the springs, it's all about the travel of your foot as opposed to the pressure your foot puts down. And again, that takes adjustment. Even though the load cell pedals are better and in theory should make you quicker, you're not immediately going to be on the pace. So it'll be interesting to see what Kyle Short-Woodard can do in order to make up for that deficit. Right now, 3 seconds off the pace. Probably not where he wants to be. Definitely not representative of a driver who is third in the Drivers' Championship. At the moment, of course, just following along. By the way, sorry, I've just been distracted a moment. Carl just sent me a message in regards to the slow lap, and he's just received an Amazon delivery during that lap. Honestly, sometimes they are just the most poorly timed things, aren't they, Amazon deliveries? I was watching a James Baldwin video, a racing driver, of course, for Mercedes-AMG eSports team, world fastest gamer, British GT. I think he got P4 in the championship in 2021. Fantastic driver. I was watching one of his YouTube videos the other day nonetheless, and he was waiting all day for an Amazon delivery, and the moment that he started a 6-hour race, guess what, the door rang and the driver was outside. Literally the moment he was on the formation lap, it came. So good on Amazon for they give us these wide windows for deliveries to be delivered, and then somehow come at the most inconvenient times and you have to wait till the next day. But can't knock him, you know. Amazon, they do great with the delivery times and things, very convenient things. I would not like to admit how much money I've spent on Amazon, because yeah, that's fine. We'll move on. Anyway, it's fine. It's nowhere near how much I've been spending on tattoos since I turned 18, but you know, that's a different issue entirely. Anyway, 8 minutes left to go on the clock here in qualifying. Second half of the session is out, and I have to say, I mean, I was talking about Andrea Chenkovan and his debut in the series. Owen Baldero, still provisional pole, 5/10 clear of our championship leader, Lewis Smith. Of course, he's invalidated his second run, which, you know, it happens. Track limits here at Singapore, albeit usually are defined by the wall, can sometimes be extended if you are ever so slightly over the curb or whatever, can be done. It is going to put a little bit more pressure on his final run in the session, though. When he comes back into pit lane, puts another fresh set on and goes again. But with half a second, I don't know. Lewis Smith, Ethan Shackleton goes up to third. But even then, 7/10 of a second off what the Williams was able to do, which is, you know, a remarkable lap time, clearly, because Ethan Shackleton, a champion, Lewis Smith, the reigning championship leader, of course, joined just last season and, well, is starting a fantastic championship campaign, it must be said. 8 points ahead in the championship. And well, there was just like, yeah, all right, boys, I'm here, I've arrived, and I'm here to impress at Singapore. Talking to him, of course, before the race and about post-race interviews and things like that, because we've only had a couple over the last couple of weeks. Not many drivers wanting to come have a chat with me, which, you know, is whatever. I'm not offended. I'm just going to cry myself to sleep. But yeah, basically, he was like, yeah, I'll come in, just I'll do my best not to swear. So he's very good at holding his tongue, definitely not so good at holding back his pace. He's come straight out of the gate in terms of qualifying pace. Of course, very different to race pace. 31 laps is a long time to be quick here at Singapore. And if you're not comfortable, things can very quickly start to go wrong. One small mistake and all of that hard work at the blink of an eye is just gone completely. All that time spent practicing, all the time up until that point in the race, putting the lap in qualifying, nil, nada. Don't care. If you DNF, you know that's no point. Understandably, but it doesn't take much for the worst to happen. You could be, you know, leading the race by 30 seconds going on to the final lap, and you crash into the final corner. And that's that, right? You don't get any points, you don't get the glory of winning. One corner, and just like that, everything has just gone wrong. That's an interesting line to be taking. It must be said, Baldero, is I think he's just having a little bit of a special moment in his car, and just, where the car wants to be. Maybe that's a game issue. Tyes Mosbergen as well, sat P4 at the moment, 6/10 off Ethan Shackleton through the final corner. Has he improved? He has, but not enough to promote his position. He at the moment is up into 4th. Again, the Red Bull driver, decent qualifying results for him, and we'll be looking to convert that into the race. Carl Stewart Woodard, of course, looking a little bit better, a bit more competitive with a 31.8. And, well, we caught that one as well, which was interesting. I mean, to be fair, for Stewart Woodard, right, he's able to blame everything on this equipment. Oh, yeah, no, I was slow, I had no equipment. Oh, yeah, the magnetic shifters threw me off. I'm not used to them returning so quickly, or whatever. The racing driver's excuses, I'm sure, will come out, but I'm not exactly sure how a brand new wheel makes you left-hand down into a wall. That's just me. It's fine. But anyway, here's Connor Stewart Woodard as well, the brother, of course. At the moment, the two of them separated by just over a tenth, 101 or 0.101 of a second. Between the pair of them, we've also got, of course, Adam Watson out on a lap. Oliver Milner, Andrea Chenkovan finally coming to put a lap in. And again, I always say that it takes a lot of sort of bravery, or maybe it's stupidity to go out so late in a session, purely because obviously you've got 18 minutes. Why wouldn't you want to use them? Of course, you're able to bed yourself into a session. You do your first lap. It doesn't have to be the lap, as I always say. It just has to be a lap. Something that you can fall back on if things were to go wrong, because you've already touched on how easy things can. Track limits or getting into a wall, and boom, all of that hard work, and it means nothing in qualifying because you'll be starting at the back with no lap time put in. So right at the start, you want to put a lap time in just to have it there. Then you can build upon it, go a little bit quicker, build your confidence, and then go for the all-out lap at the end. Andrea Chenkovan, leaving himself with just 3 minutes in the session, rides everything on this final lap. He's got nothing to fall back on should it go wrong, which means it's all or nothing. Either he goes as quick as he can and puts it on pole, or he messes up and has to settle for a position further back. He's gone purple to the first and the second sector provisionally, so maybe he's making me talk on my backside a little bit as he runs his way towards the final corner. That I can guarantee a 6:30 most definitely isn't the fastest lap by Owen Baldero. But anyway, he's retired from the session and will be spending the rest of it in pit lane. Here comes Andrea Chenkovan though across the line. Is it going to be pole? No, it's not. It's nowhere near. Over a second off. 1 minute 30.388. Nearly on to that second row. But by no means anywhere near what the lap time was by Owen Baldero. And again, ladies and gentlemen, Carl Stewart Woodard, a prime example as to why you don't text and drive, or you don't use any sort of electronic devices whilst driving. He peaked at the stream, understandable. I mean, I'm here, right? Of course. And got a taste of limits in the sense that he left hand down the wall. So there we go. At least he's honest, right? At least he's honest. He didn't give us some good old racing driver excuses. Which, fun fact actually, my local kart track Cromer, has got, and they have had for years, I think ever since I started going there, which is about 10 years ago now. They have the Car Track Chroma list of excuses, and it's things like, oh, my tyres were cold, my kart was slow, the helicopter flying over the track was distracting me, I thought a yellow flag was out, my shoelaces were untied, things like that. It's amazing. But racing drivers are renowned for it. They'll find anything they can. But at least Kyle is nice and honest, and at least he's watching the stream, which is great because it means I'm getting attention paid to me and things like that. So it's fine. He's back in the session, his own Baldero. Sorry, he didn't retire from the session. He left it entirely, which is another thing that can go wrong. It's not just your driving that can be at fault. It can be your hardware. Similar in real life, where you're at the mercy of your gearbox working, your engine working, everything working seamlessly. You're also at the mercy of your, sort of in sim racing, your hardware. Your PC staying on, or your Xbox staying on in his case, your Wi-Fi staying on, monitor staying on, all of those different things. If one thing goes wrong, and you're essentially you're helpless. There's nothing you can do in that sense to stop it from happening. Final laps of the session though being brought out with 45 seconds remaining. And that is not the way to start it, Lewis Smith. Goodness me, the championship leader has just absolutely thrown it on the final corner and will start his final lap of the session on the back foot because there's no way he can get up to speed. I mean, he can give it a go, but he'll already be starting this lap half a second down at the very least. So that effectively hands pole to Owen Baldero. What a costly mistake for the championship leader. Ethan Shackleton gets a good run out of the final corner and starts his lap on the front foot. Now into turn number 1, it's all about keeping it clean, and he goes wide and invalidates. Huge, huge mistakes from each of the championship contenders. Lewis Smith bottling it out the final corner. Ethan Shackleton too wide going into turn 2. Oliver Milner goes to P4, tipping Thijs Moosbergen, who's out there on a lap, but albeit invalidated. Singapore is proving to be difficult. How on earth has Lewis Smith allowed it to go this badly? Which means Owen Baldero, on his debut for the APC, will be starting from pole position. What a lap time! Win or not, that is a sensational achievement to not only tip Lewis Smith and Ethan Shackleton, but to do it by that big of a margin, right? Amazing stuff. Now the expectation is on him to go and win this race. 31 laps, strategy probably in the range, I mean 2-stop maybe. Ideally you want to go for a 1-stop, I'd say probably medium to hard is the baseline. With, you know, the almost guaranteed to be safety cars or anything like that. So you've got, yeah, strategy to contend with, consistency, pace all to contend with. But if he's able to keep his composure and not put any pressure on him, but he could well come out of this and be the second debut driver to win a race. It goes back to that Phineas and Ferb meme, doesn't it, with Dr. Doofenshmirtz, in the sense that if I had a nickel for every time it happened, I'd have 2 nickels, but it's weird that it happened twice. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. In the sense that 2 debut drivers in their debut race have been able to take the win. Maybe that's going to be the case. I'm not calling it too soon because a lot can happen. I always say that qualifying is definitely not the race result, but he's definitely put his best foot forward and showcased what he can do. There are the full results, as you can see. The Williams Racing debut driver of Owen Baldero on pole position. Championship leader Lewis Smith will be alongside, with Ethan Shackleton ahead of Oliver Milner on the second row. Thijs Moosbergen ahead of Andrea Chenkovan on row 3, ahead of the 2 Stuart Woodards, of course, of Kyle and Connor on row 4. Unfortunately for Adam Watson, it's only good enough for P9 in the end. And that sees him at the back end of the field. But ladies and gentlemen, what a race we could well be in store for ahead. 31 laps of the Marina Bay Street Circuit. Very, very close as well. That fight for, 4th really. Oliver Milner, Thijs Moosbergen and Andrea Chenkovan. What is that? Just over a 10th between the 3 of them. Nothing in it whatsoever. And into the race session now, of course, the final adjustments that can be made when it comes to park firming regulations. So I think they can just turn up the front wing a notch or 2. They can adjust some things in to do with, I think it's off differential. Of course, they can change their brake bias freely however they like. Of course, how much of the braking force is done by the front, how much of it is done by the rear. Usually in the form, I think a couple of years ago the meta was 50% sort of front and rear, but now I think it's actually moved a little bit more front bias to 55, I think. But again, I've never been quick on the F1 game, or at least I haven't been above average for a while. There is Owen Baldero, who is, or Baldero I should say, it's not an A there. It's easy to add in and swap letters as I please, because it's easier for my English accent to say, but it's not. It's Baldero. And hopefully he's going to be enthralled to have a chat with me a little bit later on, and not disappointed that he's thrown away a golden opportunity to go and win. I should stop talking it up, really, because as much as I don't believe in the commentator's curse, I would still feel bad. But just waiting for them to be set off on their formation lap, and of course we'll then be able to run you through the full extent of the grid order. Well, again, if you're only now just joining us, we'll run you through the full extent of everyone, and then of course we'll go through the tyres and what's going through their minds as to kickstart this race. Not the longest of runs into turn 1, but certainly a dramatic sort of start, that sprint. I mean, we saw in 2017 with the Singapore Grand Prix with a slightly wet start, Kimi Räikkönen, Seb Vettel and Max Verstappen sandwiching the Red Bull together. And then, of course, ended up going into the McLaren of Fernando Alonso. I'm sure everyone will remember. And yeah, so drama and chaos can happen, particularly, I suppose, more so when it's a shorter run, because you've got less time to go for those moves. And sometimes you entice people to go side by side, or some people get a better launch than others, and there's no time to recover from a poor start. Therefore, you just get sort of swamped, and things can very quickly go wrong, particularly with the way that turn 1 leads into turn 2 almost immediately. The racing line for 1 leads you on to the apex for turn 2. It's not like there's a distinction between the two corners. They almost just flow into one. Regardless, we are going to go to, of course, the formation lap. Let's have a quick little look as to the tyres. We won't bring up the telemetry because it just gets in the way. Apologies. We'll look at it if we need to look at, like, overtake or anything like that. But let's have a quick look at the tyres. Hards going on then for Boldero. Lewis Smith, Shackleton and Milner all going on for the mediums. Thijs Moosbergen from Chenkovan on the hards, and then of course the rest, the 2 Stuart Woodards, and then of course Adam Watson all on the mediums. So a little bit of a split, 3 going for the hards and 6 for the mediums. Also, that car is meant to be solid, not translucent. So Boldero, I think, having some internet issues or some connectivity issues, because he's had to keep joining and sort of joining the session, which is not by any stretch of the imagination what he wants. And he needs to get back on this grid, get ready for race 1. I've just been tagged in the Discord. Of course, he has. Yeah, he has just confirmed, actually, by the way. Yeah, it is a connectivity issue, which is a shame, of course, for him. We'll jack him in just after the race start, of course. Actually, you know what? No, we'll get him in now. We'll get him in for a quick interview now while we're waiting. Apologies, everyone. We'll jack him in very, very quickly. So, of course, hello. Welcome to you. And, of course, nice to meet you as well, by the way, with Owen Boldero in the commentary booth with me. Owen, just very quickly before, well, your car lines up on the grid. It won't be with you, though. What has happened with the Wi-Fi, and I suppose, how disappointed are you that you're not going to be able to convert a pole position to a victory? I think maybe just having a couple of connectivity problems still with Boldero. We'll chat to him in just a second, of course, when everything gets back to the way it needs to be. Apologies again with me just flicking between Discord and things. That does pause the game, but we'll have a chat with him in a minute when he's able to sort of bring his way back into the to the commentary booth and have a chat with us properly. I'm sure it's a very, very unfortunate thing. Lewis Smith, unfortunately, going to be starting his grid from sort of 4 or so meters back because misplaced it on the run to the grid in the end. So, round 9 of season 6 of the APC is not going to be led into turn 1 by Owen Boldero. Lewis Smith might well be able to get the jump off the line. 5 red lights are on, and we are lights out here in Marina Bay. Great start, of course, from Ethan Shackleton, but not enough to tip Lewis Smith, who takes the lead into turn number 1, side by side as well, a little bit further back. Carl Stuart under pressure from Oliver Milner, or trying to put some pressure onto Oliver Milner, I should say. Now as they exit turn number 3, Thijs Moosbergen is there. He's in 3rd place. The Mercedes looks to go to the inside of turn 3. Nicely done, of course, but not quite enough, I don't think, in order to convert the move. It's not. Lewis Smith then leads as they run their way towards the first heavy braking zone of the lap. Ethan Shackleton there in P2 ahead of Thijs Moosbergen, and of course Oliver Milner in 4th place there. And of course we've got Carl Stuart Woodard there in 5th. And looking very, very strong, hopefully, to maybe improve upon that position. Connor Stuart Woodard as well up into 7th. So Andrea Chenkovan as well, trying to make some slow progress forwards. But a decent start, it must be said, for Lewis Smith, who's able to, of course, find his way up ahead and nicely into race lead. Now, of course, the race leader and firmly so trying to cement himself in that position. Ethan Shackleton, though, his job is just going to be to stay with him. Both of them on the medium compound, both of them looking very similar in their strategy to go from medium to a hard compound. Thijs Moosbergen, of course, is there on mediums. Well, no, he's there on hards, I should say. I accidentally switched to Oliver Milner thinking it was Thijs Moosbergen. That most definitely is not. But there he is. So mediums versus hards. Of course, the expectation then is that the Mercedes is going to close up. Lewis Smith sets the fastest lap of the race because he led the first lap. On to lap 2 of 31. There we can see Adam Watson on the back of his teammate Connor Stewart-Woodard, Oliver Milner as well, trying to find a way through on Thijs Moosbergen. No DRS, of course, that won't be until next lap on this run towards the heavy braking zone here at turn 6. Is he going to be close enough, though, to launch and move up the inside? I don't think fresh tyres are going to be able to get him that far. And at this stage, it really is just settling yourself into a rhythm at Marina Bay, trying to find that consistency, trying to build yourself up and find that flow. Because one good lap in qualifying, you know, you just need to settle in and go for it. In a race distance, though, you can't afford mistakes every other lap. You can't afford to go quick and then back off and go quick and then back off. You need that continuity. You need that substance. You need a way to just keep the ball rolling, keep those wheels rolling, and keep yourself pointing, most importantly, of course, the right way. On the back of Thijs Moosbergen, still Oliver Milner, he's not really gone anywhere there. You can see the predicted strategies, hards to mediums, and then 2 mediums for a set of softs. Be interesting to see what the delta is between the pair of them, and this is what the altered layout can do. To the outside goes the Mercedes to the final chicane, but those medium tyres not quite going to give him enough grip to go the long way round of the Flying Dutchman of Thijs Moosbergen, who's done a brilliant job of maintaining that podium place. Lewis Smith sets the fastest lap and is over a second clear of Ethan Shackleton, who's a second and a half off. DRS enabled there. Carl Stewart-Woodard under pressure from Andrea Chenkovan as he puts himself up in a 5th place going into turn 1, keeps it on track as well, and the Ferrari moves his way through and trying to start his ascent towards the top. Of course, a P3 firmly on the cards, maybe more if there is a safety car or anything like that at hand. Going to flag through sector 1, though. I think that might well be Connor Stewart-Woodard, and indeed it is, missing his front left end plate. And, well, you kind of need that around Singapore. I won't lie, it does help. Downforce, a key attributor to success. And losing a front left end plate is not the way to be going about gaining downforce. He's going to have a long, grueling, terrible trip back to the pit lane. Where he'll find his way repairing that front wing, of course. Seems like the race has settled down a little bit, so what I'll do, apologies to, again for the brief interference, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and grab Mr. Owen, drag him into the commentary booth with me. Of course, it also helps if I, of course, unmute myself as well on the old Discord. Well, Owen, of course, welcome in to you, welcome into the APC. Congrats on your pole position, but unfortunately not the start of the race that you would have wanted, and definitely not the way you wanted to kickstart your championship campaign. Unfortunately, I still think experiencing difficulties, it is coming up as him muted on Discord, so I think for whatever reason he's not having the best of times with his Discord. When he is able to sort it out and when he can hear me, of course, we will have a chat with him. Would be nice to just get some insight as to what's happening with his Wi-Fi. As here goes the move for P3. Oliver Milner looking to the outside of Thijs Moosbergen, and this time gives it a good go, and the medium tyres do allow him to get to the outside of turn 6. And he finds his way through into 3rd place, although this battling has allowed Andrea Chenkovan to close in on these two. Now becomes a 3-horse race for 3rd place, provided Oliver Milner doesn't fly away into the distance. The gap at the front as well, less than a second between Lewis Smith and Ethan Shackleton. So again, both of those two incredibly close in their own right. Lap 4, of course, of 31. Plenty of racing still to happen. DRS keeping these guys nice and close. Be interesting to see, of course, if Mosbergen is able to stay close with Milner, or if he is just going to have to stay behind, play second fiddle and wait for those tyres to come back into their own, because of course the mediums are going to degrade faster, particularly if Milner is pushing them. And eventually Mosbergen is going to be able to read his way into contention. Those hard compound tyres will begin to get quicker and quicker relative to the mediums, of course. And then maybe in that second stint, when Mosbergen's on slightly quicker tyres himself, will then maybe crawl back some lap time. Because if he's able to stay in DRS, then that's happy days. He's on slower tyres and still within contention. The objective of the medium tyres is similar to what the top two are doing of Smith and Shackleton, which is to get away, check out and be gone. Here comes Andrea Chenkovan though, hard on hard, and now the Ferrari looks to the inside of the Red Bull, gets absolutely done around the outside though by the Flying Dutchman. Beautifully, nicely done by Thijs Mosbergen to stay ahead of the Croatian and keep himself in fourth. It was a bit of a half-eyed move from the Ferrari, it must be said, but in the end did not pay off the way that he would have hoped to. Oh goodness me, Lewis Smith has completely dropped it under the brakes, the rears have locked, and Ethan Shackleton takes the race lead. Another costly mistake for Lewis Smith. Lost out on pole position in qualifying, got the lucky amend that was the disconnect for Owen Boldero, and is now thrown it away, the track position that he had to Ethan Shackleton after locking it on the brakes into the hairpin. Now Shackleton has got the opportunity to showcase his pace and maybe break free. That's going to put a lot of pressure on Lewis Smith, because of course if Ethan Shackleton's then able to go and get the fastest lap, they will be tied in the World Championship. So this means a lot to Lewis Smith to stay close. He could not let Shackleton out of his sights. What a costly mistake, and how vital could it be for the World Championship? In the DRS, of course, on the back of the Ferrari, but not really close enough to contend. Very close here. This time the Red Bull goes for a more defensive line, but the up and under is there for the Ferrari. Chenkovan trying to go to the outside, but once again settles for the up and under. This time, of course, doesn't work, but the pressure is on for Thijs Mosbergen as Oliver Milner makes it a 2-3-4 Mercedes in their bid for the Constructors' Championship. And we'll try once more with Owen Boldero in his bid, of course, to finally give us some insight. So I'll try once more, and well, that's not going to work, is it? He backs out. That's nice, lovely, fantastic. It's all gone a little bit wrong for Boldero today. I think that might be a result of his Wi-Fi issues. Unfortunately, putting it on at the back foot both in the race today and come and have a chat with us, basically. But it's fine. Of course, we'll excuse it. We'll let this battle die down ever so slightly, because Andrea Chenkovan is putting the pressure on. Neither of them have much energy recovery system left to use. Of course, as shown by the flashing rain light at the back of the car. In the DRS, in towards turn number one. Slight deterrence there from Thijs Mosbergen. Getting a little bit naughty with his elbows into turn number one, though. The 95 machine finds his way through. Muscles the Red Bull off the circuit, who eventually must concede, who is not maybe going to give this up. There's a run in towards turn 6, of course, with the DRS, and maybe that's going to be Mosbergen's chance to bite back. Lap 7 of 31. DRS open for the Red Bull. He's tucked up nicely in the slipstream. Is it going to be enough by the time they reach the braking zone, or is he just going to have to sit behind? Not enough for Mosbergen. Andrea Chenkovan is through into 4th place. Also, speaking of gaps and things, 2 seconds now is the one at the front between Ethan Shackleton and Lewis Smith. So definitely showcasing how costly that mistake was, because Lewis Smith could have kept Shackleton behind for quite some time. But of course the mistake under brakes, and that's why you have to brake when you're straight, because as soon as you do it while you're turning, the tyres are loaded, and then you press the brake and then they get loaded even more, and then the car just goes around, basically, gets to twitch. He held onto it well as to not go into the barrier. Definitely going to be suffering from a lack of confidence and a lack of pace, it seems, in the race ahead of Ethan Shackleton. We are going to try once more, and no, it's not working for poor old Owen Boldero. I fear I think we might just have to give that one a bit of a miss for today. Hopefully he'll be back next week well, with better Wi-Fi basically, so he can actually race as opposed to just going out and qualifying. I think he is still just a ghost, he is. But funnily enough, he's not last. So not doing too bad, I suppose, even then. Would be nice to see Williams get some points on the board. There's a nice little slide there from Thijs Moosbergen. Yeah, only a handful of rounds left to go in this championship, of course. We go all the way to round 14, so just over a month left of racing will be done by the midpoint of June. Which, by the way, is not that long away, and we're wow, no, by the time this championship's finished, we'll be halfway through the year, which is absolutely disgusting. That can't be true. 2024 has only just started, guys. No, we're in May. Sorry, that's a bit of a tangent, but how disgusting is that? Was it just yesterday? It was New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. But no, it wasn't. It was 5 months ago. It's disgusting. I'm sorry, I cannot accept that. But it's fine. Life moves on, I suppose. And then eventually, of course, the inevitable happens. But let's enjoy this race before we get too philosophical and deep and depressing, as Thijs Moosbergen, track limits on the exit of the hairpin, gets himself a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings, and track limits here at Singapore can bite you in the backside if you're not careful. 3/4 of a second between him and Andrea Chenkovan. He's pushing hard to stay with the Ferrari, but it's not enough. Of course, just a quick reminder as to how things are going on with the tyres. Mediums for 6 of the cars, hards for the other 3. Of course, the other 2 that are still in this race, which are, of course, these 2 of Andrea Chenkovan and Thijs Moosbergen. The rest are on mediums and will be on a slightly altered strategy. Position changes as well, up 2 for Shackleton. Gains, of course, for Milner and Chenkovan, as well as, of course, the Carl Stewart Woodard and Adam Watson. Unfortunately, of course, for Owen Baldera, that's only 7 places down because he started on pole position. He's now 8th with his Ghost crawling around the Marina Bay Street Circuit. Connor Stewart Woodard as well, there in P9. So Shackleton out in front, dominant force, of course, off the back of that sensational victory in Zandvoort late on with the safety car. That sprint to the finish that we had, he handled it perfectly. Changeable conditions all throughout. And was pleased as ever to come out on top with the victory on, of course, his champion rivals' home soil of Jordi Lansing and Thijs Moosbergen, and was able to then get even closer to the lead of Lewis Smith, who, by the way, Shackleton missed round 6 at Silverstone and is now still only 8 points off the championship lead. Ferrari lead the way as well in the constructors. So again, it's just going from strength to strength, really, more than anything. So watch out for Shackleton for his return back to championship glory, or will Lewis Smith be able to get on top? I mean, in this race, and what we've seen as well, Lewis Smith, of course, not putting a lap time in qualifying last week, his mistake in qualifying at the back end of it today, and, of course, that mistake in the race, they seem like small, minor things, right? Yeah, he made that mistake in qualifying, but he made up for it in the race. All right, cool. What about if that pace he used in the race was better suited by him starting further forward? Could he have gone and won? Could he have bagged even an extra couple of points? Again, in qualifying. Doesn't seem like a big issue because he missed out on 1 lap and still qualified on the front row. But that's only because we're looking back in hindsight. Those mistakes are going to be costly, and each and every single one of them will affect how he drives, will affect his composure, his confidence. And speaking to Guy Smith on the weekend as well, the 2003 Le Mans winner in the Bentley Speed 8, he was talking about the pressure and things that gets to as a driver. And sometimes he said that, particularly, I mean, it's slightly different compared to F1, of course, to sports car racing, but he was saying how, particularly sort of at the end of the race, the final 2 hours or whatever, all you really start to think about are what can go wrong. Of course, he had the pressure of Bentley's return to Le Mans after their sensational run of victories in the late 20s and, of course, the early 30s of the 1900s. He came back into it with the Speed 8, with the prospect, and the bare minimum of a 1-2 finish, as they were told by their sort of lead managing director of Bentley, they said we have to go into this race with a 1-2. We have to 1-2 this race, otherwise it's not good enough. And he was leading with 2 hours to go, and all he could think about was, okay, is that a strange noise? Is it working right? Did I hear something wrong with the gearbox? Is the throttle response well? All of these things that are mounting up, making sure he hits the apex, seeing that as the time goes by, slower and slower and slower, as the pressure builds up and up and up. Even of a driver his caliber, a Le Mans winner, a multi-endurance champion that is Guy Smith, and a plethora of real-world racing experience, fighting at the top level, even he feels pressure. So for Lewis Smith, these mistakes that are racking up and up, costly mistakes in this race, yeah, cost him 1 position, but that 1 position that he lost thanks to that mistake, and now 2 seconds has opened up to Ethan Shackleton, has cost him 7 World Championship points, which, by the way, is 87.5% of the gap that Ethan Shackleton was behind in going into this race. Pressure is a huge thing, and it will only snowball more and more out of control. Slowly but surely. Into the pit lane though, so pit lane window is open, it must be said. Lewis Smith is going to stay out, maybe try and go for a bit of an overcut then. Let's see what sort of pace he's got. Andrea Chenkovan, what tyres are he going on to? Medium, so it is going to be a 2-stop then for Shackleton. Maybe that's why he's prompted an early stop, as opposed to the 2 Mercedes and Andrea Chenkovan, of course, that are still going long. Of course, understandable the Ferrari is, because of course he's on a harder compounded tyre, and on actually the back of Oliver Milner. So Chenkovan has closed in. Those mediums definitely are going to be starting to go off. But Lewis Smith out there. So what sort of strategy is he going to impose? Is he going to attempt a 1-stop then? Go from mediums to hards as opposed to Shackleton's medium, hard? Medium, soft? No, surely not. He's not going to go soft. Softs won't last 10 laps here. I remember back in the, where we had the Pirelli Rainbow, the Hypersoft, Ultra Soft, Super Soft, Soft, Medium, Hard. And of course you had Hypersofts here at Singapore, where the Hypersofts would go off within like sort of 4 or 5 laps. And within 3, you were feeling the tyre deg. They were rapid for the first lap, out of the gates, boom. But then after lap 3, you really start to feel the stress. Of course, Pirelli have now just gone for soft, medium, hard as the compounds, but within that, they've got the C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which are varying differences of hardness. I think they are running the softest range here at Singapore. So the softs effectively are what you would class as maybe hyper softs back in the day. So I wouldn't imagine that he's going to be going for softs at the end. He's got to go hard. Maybe he just wants longer on the mediums to sort of try and tip Lewis Smith, or maybe, I don't know. We'll have to find out. Definitely can work, because the pit lane here at Singapore is not the longest in the world. It only spans the relatively short pit straight. Plus turn 1. So, it is doable. All depends on how slow Lewis Smith is going to be until he comes into the pit lane, how much his tyres are going to drop off, and how much pace Ethan Shackleton can hold throughout the rest of this Grand Prix. We are approaching half distance, of course. That'll be on lap 16 when we tick our way into the second half of this race. So a quick rundown of things on lap 13 going on to 14. Lewis Smith is leading, but does owe us a pit stop. Not this lap, so goes one more longer. Oliver Milner there in second, but under pressure from Andrea Chenkovan on the harder compound tyre, which are now starting to come into their own, of course, with the mediums dropping off. As there we go, Milner into the pit lane, off of his hard medium compound tyres. And interestingly, Andrea Chenkovan is in as well. So if he's going for a 1-stop, he'll have to be going onto the medium compound tyre. Is it doable to get to the end of this race? Ethan Shackleton's at the quick lap of it as well, a 1:33.2, and is only about 17 seconds off the race lead. Chenkovan, what has he gone on to? They are mediums. Is he going 2 sets of mediums to the end? Interesting. Oliver Muller has done the same. He's gone on to another set of mediums as well. So it seems the consensus here is a 2-stop. Chenkovan was quicker on the hards compared to Milner, of course, on the mediums. Maybe there is going to be some dispute between the pair of them. Ethan Shackleton showcasing the difficulties of a 2-stop strategy, and that is going to be traffic with Thijs Mosbergen, not necessarily in the way, but in the way. And that's going to be halting his progress on getting after Lewis Smith and keeping that gap as low as possible as to stay in front by the time that Lewis Smith comes into the pit lane. The last thing he wants on a 2-stop strategy is Lewis Smith to pit and then him come into the pit lane on the back foot. Regardless, he pulls out and finds his way past Thijs Mosbergen, who definitely is not in the same race as that Ferrari. Ideally, Ethan Shackleton wants to close that gap, be in front when Lewis Smith comes into the pit lane, and at the very least still be in front when he comes back in. That's sort of the benchmark that you have to aim for in a 2-stop strategy. How much of that gap can he close in the next 2 laps, while also trying to keep some sustenance in those tyres. But that gap is closing, and fairly quickly. The race is fairly tame, so we'll give Owen Baldero one more chance. Well, good news is that he's stayed in the session, or stayed in the call, for longer than 2 seconds. Owen, of course, finally, I know you've been able to hear me, but, you know, of course, good to meet you and everything. Pole position on debut. Not quite the race that you would have imagined because, well, you didn't even make the lights. And no, unfortunately not for Baldero. Maybe we'll try again next week or whatever. Again, I don't think his microphone or whatever is working, which is such a shame because, again, I would have loved to sort of speak with him and gain some insight as to as to his race and well, his lack of a race, I suppose. His qualifying lap, how he was feeling coming into it, his aspirations maybe for the championship, because his pace is very, very strong. But yeah, not what we wanted whatsoever. Definitely was not 4th time lucky for Mr. Baldero. There we are, into the second half of this race. Still no pit stop from Lewis Smith or... in fact, no, that's it actually. Let's take a quick look as to the stops. Of course, Thijs Mosbergen is yet to come in as well. So for those two still out there, of course, one of them on the hards, which is understandable, but the other one's on the mediums. And he's stretching these really long. Ethan Shackleton is chipping away bit by bit of this gap. And I don't know. I mean, if Ethan Shackleton overtakes Lewis Smith before he comes into the pit lane, that effectively once again puts them on level pegging, puts them on the same strategy again, because obviously Ethan Shackleton has made up that deficit of the extra stop. Don't forget, of course, Shackleton still has to go onto the set of hards. But then again, so does Lewis Smith. Huh. And that has, I have to say, by the way, again, small tangent, that's probably my best impression of a Minecraft villager I think I've ever made, and it wasn't even on purpose. It was just me being genuinely perplexed with the strategy going on by Lewis Smith. It is either genius or I don't know, just the opposite of genius. I don't want to say stupidity, because it might not be. It could well have some good theory behind it, and probably at worst is going to get in P2. But he stays out another lap. They must be screaming for help, those medium tyres. How on earth is he making these work? The gaps are coming down. Let's track it this lap. Right, let's see the gap. 8.8 as Ethan Shackleton crosses the line. into the pit lane, Tyes Mosberg, and off of the hard compound tyres. So even he has deemed the hards unusable and is going on to the mediums to the end of this race. Of course, on lighter fuel loads, less inertia, less load on the tyres, it's fine. So, the medium tyres should get to the end. Lewis Smith is out there on a set of medium tyres that he's been on since the start of this race with, no offence to him, but not the cleanest of driving. Small bits of lockups, twitchy on the exit. These tyres haven't exactly been nurtured. I mean, recently his lap times have been very, very consistent, very smooth, and the response on the steering has been alright. But in half of a lap, Ethan Shackleton has been able to close by nearly 2 seconds. That's not an insignificant amount of time. Lewis Smith needs to be ahead by the time Ethan Shackleton comes back into the pit lane. There's Chenkovan, by the way, still on the back of Oliver Milner. These two on the similar strategy, I think, to the end of this race. Both of them, well, Chenkovan, to be fair, could go to the end, but I think he might be going on to another set of mediums. Milner, of course, will have to come in again for a set of hards, or softs, whichever tickles his fancy, but I'd probably recommend going for the hards. Because, of course, there is the rule that you have to change compound unless it's a wet-affected race. So if you start on the hard, you have to go to either the mediums or the softs. Mediums, you have to go hard or soft. Softs, you have to go medium or hard, etc. You basically just have to change the colour of your tyre at least once throughout the duration of the race. 3.8 seconds, by the way, on that last lap. Nearly 4 seconds. From Lewis Smith to Ethan Shackleton. At what point is Lewis Smith doing more harm than good? And why on earth is he still out there on that circuit? He's sliding around. You can see there the car did not want to respond going into that left-hander. He was floating the car through rather than driving it through. Which, don't get me wrong, can sometimes be quick, but not when you're on 18-lap-old medium tyres at Singapore. Still just trying to figure this out. He's got to come into the pits this lap. What? He's lost another 3 seconds that lap. A 37.8 to a 34.5. Over 3 seconds. What? The gap now is less than 2 seconds. It was 16 seconds 3 laps ago. I don't know, Chief. I've got to be honest. Is he just holding out to put himself and Ethan Shackleton back on equal pegging? But all he's done is given Ethan Shackleton the opportunity to be on faster, fresher tyres for longer. Unless he's going... But he can't, because Shackleton's going to come back onto a set... Well, to be fair, yeah, it's going to be a set of hards. They're each going to be on a set of hards. So by doing an alternate strategy, all he's done is put themselves back on the same strategy. I don't know. What is this overtake going to mean for the rest of this race? Because, of course, Ethan Shackleton is going to be so much later on the brakes, so much braver on them, and easily find a way through, surely. At what point does Lewis Smith decide to call this quits? At what point is he at risk of a puncture? So the Ferrari, of course, thanks to the tight and twisty nature of Singapore, isn't able to find a way through as of yet. Is Lewis Smith coming into the pit lane? Finally! Goodness me, 19 long laps, and he finally decides to come into the pit box. Now, the question is, what set of tyres is he going to be going on to? What are the Mercedes crew bringing out? And it's soft. He's gone soft. Okay, right. Interesting. The championship lead is on the line because Ethan Shackleton, of course, now has the fastest lap of this race, which gives him an 8-point swing over whoever's in second place. And Lewis Smith has gone from a medium to a soft at Marina Bay. Okay, right. This is probably the most daring strategy I think I've ever seen, I've got to be honest. 11 laps on a set of softs. 12 laps even on a set of softs. He's got to do lap 20 and lap 31. So he's now, what, 26 seconds off the back of Ethan Shackleton? Who, yeah, granted, that's going to have to come back into the pit lane. But we'll be on to set for hard, so yeah, Lewis Smith is going to be on faster tyres, but for how long? At what point are these softs going to completely drop off a cliff? At least for Shackleton, he's sort of got the confidence in his tyres. He knows those hard tyres aren't going to fall off a cliff in 11 laps, right? He knows that. And yet, Lewis Smith has gone into a tyre that he cannot comfortably get to the end of. He can't push it. He can't use those softs because he has to make sure they have to get to the end. If you sort of pick up what I'm putting down as such. Ethan Shackleton on hards, he doesn't have to worry about their condition. He can push them as hard as he likes. Whereas Lewis Smith has to be mindful of not to overdrive the softs, having to not take too much out of them, put too much temp into them. He's quick, very quick at the moment, but there is still a third of this race left to go. Maybe, I don't know, we'll have to speak to him. I'm sure he's rehearsed this. I'm sure it's a strategy that's worked for him before. It's just not one I've ever seen, I've got to be honest. And maybe I'm rambling on about it too long. Maybe it's not that deep. Maybe it is a viable strategy. Maybe he is still going to win this race. I just don't see it. Okay, right. Anyway, there are other battles on track. This one between Oliver Milner and Andrea Chenkovan has been happening for quite some time. Chenkovan is unable to find a way through on Milner and is sort of stuck at that. I'm close and I'm quicker, but I can't find a way past half a second range. Where you close up, then because you're so close, dirty air and traction and things like that, you drop back off. And then you close back up again, and then you can't get the overtake done, so you drop back again. And then you close up again, and then you can't immediately get the overtake done. That's what he needs to do. Drop back, drive onto the back of the Mercedes, and get it done. Easy as that, right, surely. No. But that's what he needs to do. Use that backwards momentum. Drive on the back of him before the sort of the dirty air can affect him too much. Get in the slipstream and commit to a pass. But of course, if Milner makes that difficult with the defence, which I'm sure he will, Lewis Smith, by the way, gets the fast lap back off Shackleton, makes it a 32.461, which I think might secure him that fastest lap point. Which, to be fair, maybe that's his ideology. Maybe he knew he was going to finish second in this race, and as such wanted to stop Shackleton from making an 8-point swing and instead drop it back to a 6-point swing. Maybe that's his idea of damage limitation. As opposed to sort of going for a strategy that might see him win the race, he's going for a strategy that's going to limit the damage as much as possible, in which case I can sort of see the theory behind it. But I can't get behind the idea that he would purposely put himself on a slightly weaker strategy in order to settle for second. Surely you'd try and go for a better strategy than you and your opponent. So I'm not going to put words in his mouth and pretend like I know what I'm talking about, because I most certainly don't. I'm a commentator. There's a reason we talk about them as opposed to drive them. Because we aren't good. Arjuna Kankipati, who was a big commentator in the World of Sim Racing, one of course that I'm pleasure to be mates with, he always says those that can't do teach, and those that can't teach commentate. Essentially just meaning that we can't drive, we can't teach people how to drive, so we just comment on their driving and judge them for it, because we are perfectly within our right to do that. We've got the capacity to do that. Andrea Chenkovan, by the way, is on the back of Oliver Milner, looking for the inside of turn 1. Lewis Smith is closing in on the back on these softs as well. But I fear that he might be taking too much out of these tyres. So Lewis Smith is within 2 seconds of Chenkovan and Oliver Milner. Ethan Shackleton, those mediums are going to be starting to drop off, I think, ever so slightly. And yeah, he is 2 seconds down. Maybe Lewis Smith is going to be the driving force that Chenkovan needs to find a way through on Oliver Milner. Of course, Chenkovan struggling to just find that extra little bit to find a way past. Of course, you can see low on battery, I think that's just over to 13-ish or so percent that we're seeing on his heads-up display. Maybe if Lewis Smith finds a way past Chenkovan, then Lewis Smith inevitably finds his way past Milner, and then that gives Chenkovan what he needs to find a way through, because right now it's just not working. We saw there a half-hearted attempt into turn 1, and all it did was put him over the sausage curbs and put him on the back foot. Maybe if I was him, I'd let Smith through, tuck him behind, and wait for that gap to open up for me. But then again, they are both Mercedes, so it's a Ferrari sandwich, of course, with Mercedes bred, but not for very long, because Lewis Smith comes barging up the inside, turns to the outside for turn 6, and finds his way up into 3rd place. I don't think Milner's going to make this particularly difficult for him. Or at least you'd hope not, considering they are 20 points off the Constructors' Championship, and their main competitors in the form of Ferrari are 1 and 4. They need to maximise all the points they can get. And there we go, the swap between the two Mercedes, nicely done from Milner. That was smooth as butter. And finds his teammate up in the 2nd place, 11 seconds off Ethan Shackleton, who of course if he does come in now, will be losing the race lead. Tell you what, actually, I don't know. I don't know who's going to win this race. Because Ethan Shackleton, right, 10.2 seconds, he comes into the pit lane, which he has to, by the way, because he didn't start the race on hards. So he has to change compound. He has to come into the pit lane. He's going to be 14, 13 seconds off the back of Smith, who, yeah, granted, is going to be on some old tyres. There we go, Andrea Chenkovan is through on Oliver Milner, who comes into the pit lane. So Lewis Smith is going to be decently ahead. Granted on old tyres, and maybe Shackleton is going to be able to close the gap. Hang on, is that rain? Oh my god, it is. What is this race? So we've got rain. We've got a driver that needs to come into the pit box. If DRS gets the save... I don't know. Is this wet enough to constitute... No, but you have to use a wet tyre for the rule to be null and void. So it's not like Ethan Shackleton to take those mediums to the end. Unless it's like the last lap, the last corner, DRS gets disabled. Okay, this is just... This is why I love motor racing, because a million different things can happen. Because conventionally, Ethan Shackleton comes in, he's 16 seconds off. There's only a couple laps left of the race. Lewis Smith wins by nursing those tyres to the end and hoping he doesn't get a puncture. Now there's rain. Does it pick up enough to force both of these drivers into a pit stop? Because you can see there, it's definitely greasy. Even on the softer slicks, he's struggling. The traction is going to be losing, especially at a circuit like Marina Bay. Has anyone braved it onto the inters yet? They have. Oliver Milner's gone onto inters. I think that's too early. I don't think he's got the grip. No, he hasn't. So we'll leave this up for just a second, purely so we can see how this race develops. In comes Ethan Shackleton. In comes Lewis Smith. So maybe it is bad enough. DRS is yet to be disabled, but a wet-affected race for the 3rd week in a row. Oliver Milner on the inters. If he's actually been quicker than the slicks, no way does he win this race. Thijs Mosberger needs to come into the pit lane as well. Into Zahn, off he pops, boom. Andrea Chenkovan is through and out, and Lewis Smith is going to be following Ethan Shackleton. What is going to be the gap with 6 laps left to go in this race? Where is Oliver Milner? Nowhere near. Where is Andrea Chenkovan? That track looks horrible. That is wet. Chenkovan, I think, has just done the overcut. He has. He's timed it perfectly with the into-slick crossover. No, he hasn't. Oh my goodness me, no, he hasn't. I've misjudged that completely. Milner's through into 4th. And Andrea Chenkovan is about 1.7 seconds back, so it hasn't. There is the DRS disabled. Oh no, Carl Stewart Woodard. Oh my goodness me. 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. I suppose old slicks on a damp track definitely don't help your stopping distance. He goes on to the intermediate tyres as well. Oh, this race has just been completely flipped upside down. Thijs Mosberg, he's on mediums. Oh, yeah, we've seen questionable strategies in this race. I don't think that's one of the viable ones there. Mosbergen, he's drifting around. I think he's a bit of a hazard out there. There's contact. He's going to be hoping that Lewis Smith doesn't have damage. Lewis Smith going to send one up the inside, lock the rears, drift his way through, up in a second place. Nicely done. 7 seconds off the lead. He needs to be quick. He needs to be fast. Of course, that does ferment his fastest lap. That's the wrong thing. There we go. Boom. 1:32.4. So that does mean he is going to be walking away with the fastest lap point, which gives him 6 of a deficit to Ethan Shackleton, which going into round 10 is going to be a 2-point lead in the championship. And 6.8. I don't think it's coming down enough for Lewis Smith to win, unless Shackleton makes a mistake. Andrea Schenk, of course, through on Thijs Mosbergen, who was inevitably bit the bullet. Is into this race. And yeah, into this race. Of course he's in this race. He's been in a race. Sometimes I baffle myself with my stupidity, I've got to be honest. It's like that Jeremy Clarkson quote with sometimes Reginus is almost frightening. Generates gravity, I think that's one as well. Sub 6 seconds, by the way, to fight for the lead. Ethan Shackleton from Lewis Smith. I think we just have to track the progress between these two, I've got to be honest. 5.5, Shackleton definitely not feeling the groove at a wet Marina Bay, which, to be fair, I do not blame him for. It is a tough circuit to crack in slick conditions, let alone when you've got to go to the Inters. So we're heading on to lap 28, which of course is the 4th last lap. So they do lap 28, 29, 30, 31. 4 laps to go. Ticking them down in 5 seconds. So he needs just over. So, yeah, 4 laps, 5 seconds. Or 5 laps. No, 5 seconds, 4 laps. So he needs 1.25 seconds per lap to win this race. Plus, obviously, overtaken as well. Or he needs to close a second every 0.8 of a lap. Essentially. Which is difficult, and it's not been a pace that he's been keeping up. So I think Shackleton is just settling himself into a rhythm, getting acclimatized to the circuit, maintaining that gap as best he can without worrying too much about pushing. Whereas Lewis Smith, of course, has to drive that car to the limit and even to have a remote chance of catching up. 5 seconds is a tough nut to crack, and means that he is going to be on the limit. Adam Watson gets himself a penalty, 3 seconds for multiple warnings. That makes him the 3rd driver to do so, with his apparent teammate, of course, of Connor Stewart Woodard, and then, of course, Thijs Mosbergen. And there is Lewis Smith. Once again, a very peculiar line, but it's one that actually was on par with Ethan Shackleton going to the hairpin. Just sort of locking the rears and using the rear as rotation, getting an insane amount of slip angle on the rear. Of course, slip angle is the car's sort of relative degree of rotation compared to the direction that it's travelling. So, of course, if it's pointing straight forward and it's sideways, you've got a lot of slip angle, and that's not good. But a little bit here and there, a couple of degrees, about 5 or 6 degrees slip angle relative to the apex. And the car's rotating quite nicely to get around the corner. Of course, not usually something you'd see that much of, but sometimes in the wet where you haven't got much downforce on the front, particularly with cars like F1 cars that haven't got great turning circles, and you can't actually get the front end to turn around and bite through the corner and you just bog down. Sometimes it is better just to use the weight of the car, not necessarily Scandinavian flick it, but just give it a kick with some oversteer, use some power oversteer to counteract the understeer. Sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it's not. It all depends, and it really does chop and change. But I think in that occasion, it might have at the very least been on par with just taking a normal, clean racing line. On to the third last lap, by the way, and Lewis Smith has not been closing over a second a lap that he needs to win this race. That might be why. Of course, cranking on the lock and cranking on some oversteer. Let's see what he does into the hairpin again. Does he do the same thing? He does. I don't know if that's a mistake or what, but he is just going in very, very quickly, locking the rear brakes, just very hard, very decisive on the brakes, and then just flicking the car in as such. I don't know. We'll have to watch Ethan Chapman on the next go through and sort of compare the two lines. But that is a way, particularly, I think at the initial stage of this game cycle through the Lowe's hairpin at Monaco, of course, with how tight it is and how wide these wheelbases on these F1 cars are, the steering angle is very difficult to tip it in. So again, I saw a lot of people just drifting the way around and hooking the rear end around that way, as opposed to just being really clunky and slow with the steering and keeping that minimum speed up. Similarly, actually, to the Bentley Speed 8, I know I keep bringing it up because, you know, I was there at Donning Historic and blah, blah, blah. And I drove on the Sims. I drove it on the Sim at Donny. And again, the Le Mans hypercar, as brilliant as it was, didn't have a lot of front end. Going into the Melbourne hairpin at Donington, obviously as you go through the Fogger TSs down the hill into the second last corner, again, you brake, you try and keep it on the front end, but it just doesn't bite as much. Maybe it's a skill issue on my part, but I just couldn't quite get that front end to bite. And what I had to do is really manipulate it with the trail braking, keeping that weight on the front end while also trying to keep that rear end light so I could get that rotation to hit a nice apex. And it might be a similar place with these F1 cars around Marina Bay. Again, it's all in the braking. And that's the thing really in the rain. It's not as such how fast you can put your foot down. It's more a case of how efficiently you can actually stop the car. That is more decisive. That's a better skill than throttle control personally in the rain. Of course, don't get me wrong, throttle control is incredibly important, and well, there we go. Lewis Smith actually taking a normal line, and this time through it was significantly so than Ethan Chapman. I know I did say we were going to follow Ethan through, but yeah. A lap and a half to go, not even a lap and 3 corners to go in this race. And Ethan Chapman is on course for victory. So, 1 lap left to go. And Ethan Shackleton is on course for a 2nd consecutive victory and a step closer to the World Championship lead that, of course, he won back in Season 4. He had a season off, and Season 5 is not win the title, but has been back, has been fighting, and Lewis Smith has been able to mount a decent challenge. It would have been interesting to see this race stay slick, but of course that wasn't what happened. And Ethan Shackleton, yes, he's been slower in the rain, but he's been consistent and kept that pace where it needs to be. Let's follow him through, of course, both the Singapore sling and into the hairpin, just over the bridge. What does he do? Keeps the car straight, down to 2nd gear, locks the car in, and then gets on the power. Easy as that. Lewis Smith does the similar thing as well this lap, so clearly the slip angle wasn't the way to go and was in fact just mistakes. But with an 8-point gap in the championship with Andreas Schenkovan, a move to the inside of Oliver Milner. Now that is getting very dicey indeed, a controversial one at that. And maybe will have to be looked, of course, at the stewards, who have, of course, all do a brilliant, brilliant job each week, week in, week out, to deliver and you know, a fantastic in their own right, Ed and Jay, of course. But all attention is on this man right here, Ethan Shackleton, across the line in Singapore for the 2nd consecutive time in Season 6. He takes to the top step and closes the championship lead to just 2 points, heading in to round 10. Lewis Smith close, but no cigar for him. Andrea Chenkovan is through for third place, making it a Ferrari 1 and 3 for their pursuit for the Constructors' Championship and extending their lead ahead of Aston Martin and Mercedes, who will move their way up in a second place in the Constructors' Championship, but will be losing ground to Ferrari. Just going to be waiting for pretty much everyone else to cross the line effectively, running through the final finishing order, and then, of course, into what hopefully are going to be some abundant podium interviews. I think the argument, is for Carl Stewart-Woodard. He'll make his way across the line eventually, and then we'll run you through the finishing order and then talk to some drivers about their experiences this race, because it was a very, very tough one indeed. So, have a word. Driver of the day, Ethan Shackleton. First time really I ever agree with the game. He did exactly what he needed to, capitalise on mistakes. Didn't necessarily do anything special. Just drove a good, clean, consistent race, and that's all that it was needed to do for him to go and seal victory for round, of course, number 9 of Season 6 of the Almost Pro Championship. Ahead, of course, his championship rival of Lewis Smith, who is still just the points leader going into round 10. Of course, that fastest lap saving him and limiting the damage. Andrea Chenkovan for the second time in a row as well for Ferrari. They're in third ahead of Oliver Milner. Thijs Mosbergen rounds off the top 5, basically finishing where he started, not too bad at all. Then comes Carl Stewart-Woodard, upper place from 7th into 6th. Adam Watson into 7th. Connor Stewart-Woodard stays 8th. And of course, our pole sitter of Owen Baldora. He unfortunately has fallen back to P9 after not really able to start in the race at all. Of course, technical difficulties for him, Wi-Fi wise, and we'll only be scoring 2 points, if that. I don't mean that he might not even be allowed the points, which is understandable. He didn't actually drive the race. Regardless, what we'll do is we'll flip our way over to this wonderful screen and hopefully be talking to some drivers very, very shortly in their sort of feelings of the race, how they thought they got on, and well, hopefully, just again, as I say, a little bit of insight. We'll give it a while just so they can cool off after the race, because understandably it is difficult to just jump straight into an interview. I don't expect them to be on the ball. They can take their time, but obviously we're going into the next round, which of course is going to be the sprint round on the 14th of May. So we're going to have a sprint quali into the sprint race, into a qualifying, into a 50% race. So of course it's going to be a little bit longer next week. More points on offer as well. And I think, I can't exactly remember who it was exactly. Might have been Shackleton that was looking forward to Interlagos, which of course is in a couple of weeks' time as well. He might well be able to find his way up a couple of places. Maybe in the championship closing points relative to Lewis Smith, who I think we have got joining us in the commentary booth. Welcome in, of course. I mean, tough race, I think, for everyone involved. 31 very long laps here at Singapore. I suppose just talk us through your story of the race and how you felt you got on. I think we're maybe having some more people having trouble with the mute button again in the commentary booth. It is an easy one to mistake. I do it all the time when it comes to commentating. But of course, hopefully, I believe we've got Lewis Smith in with us. He can adjust his mic and be sorted, because it would be nice to, of course, as I say, talk about his decisions on the strategy, how he thought and how he's feeling about of course, his race. I think he is messing around. I can see the buttons changing. Hopefully he is here, and when he does, do feel free to jump in, Lewis. Just let me know how you thought the race went on for you when it comes to your, of course, very peculiar strategy, it must be said, with the softs right at the end, of course, going those mediums all the way to the end. Whether it wasn't for the rain, you think you could have maybe gone on for the victory. But I don't think it is going to be working, so unfortunately I think we might just have to give this one a bit of a miss. If anyone else wants to jump in, again, as I say, feel free to. Ethan Shackleton, I think, wants to come in and give us a quick little chat as well. So that would be definitely very nice indeed, just to jump in. It keeps saying for Lewis Smith that he doesn't have permission to speak in the commentary booth. Maybe, hang on. If I head into the waiting room with you, Lewis, can you hear me? Can you speak? No. So it's not even the same in the waiting room. Okay, that's interesting. Right. Regardless, I don't think that is going to work then. That is it was a good idea in practice, in theory, not in practice. Here today, hopefully we can get Ethan Shackleton in. He is there, so we're going to drag him almost immediately in. Now this worked last week. Hopefully he can hear me again this week, and hopefully we can finally have a post-race interview. Ethan, of course, congratulations on the win. 2 points now is the sort of gap in the championship between you and Lewis. How are you feeling about the rest of the season? No, it's not. It's not working. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have to sort this out. Goodness me. Apologies. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing the driver can do about it either. I think we might just have a bit of a revamp on the Discord as to who can chat where and whatever. I think what we'll do then, unfortunately, is going to have to give the post-race interviews a little bit of a miss. Maybe what we'll do, if the drivers who wanted to have a chat can just give me a brief of their race, anything they wanted to say as such, then happily, we'll sort of address it at the start of next week. Maybe that's an idea. If Lewis Smith, Ethan Shackleton, they want to give me a little a bio of their race, how they thought they went on, aspirations for the rest of the championship. In fact, actually no. Boom. What we'll do, we'll get Lewis Smith in. We've just been told that Carl has sorted it. Lewis, of course, welcome in. Thank you for coming to join us. Apologies, of course, for the technical difficulties. I suppose just talk us through your race and how you thought the race went on from your side. Very peculiar strategy, it must be said, with the softs, and very difficult right at the end with the rain. No, it's not working. Okay, as I say, we'll give it a miss for this week, and we'll go again stronger, hopefully, next week with the... Oh, no, he's back. Are we back? Can you hear me? Can you speak? Okay, no, right. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I'm as confused as you are, I'm sure, in this one. What I'm going to do then is simply just call it a day with that one. Apologies for the messing around with the podium interviews. Again, like I say, Ethan Shackleton, Lewis Smith, give me a quick little write up about your race. We'll address it at the end of the waiting room. Of the waiting room. Hopefully at the end of the waiting room when they can come and talk to us next week. But at the start of next week, when we head into Dakota, of course, the two championship leaders would be nice to maybe have their thoughts and feelings going into it. But, ladies and gentlemen, of course, thank you so much for watching. That is going to bring an end to our race today. Round number 9, of course, here at Singapore. And we will see you next week, of course. COTA, the sprint round, will be live from 7:30 in the UK. Translate that to wherever you are around the world, because it's not going to be something you want to miss. 2 points in the World Championship between Lewis Smith and Ethan Shackleton, the Ferrari driver, off the back of 2 consecutive victories, both at Zandvoort and today in Singapore. My name has been Zach Sweeney. I thank you so much all for watching along at home. Take care. It's goodbye for now.